The Grand Hall of Nexus Prime sparkled with light from 1,000 stars. Representatives from 50 different worlds had gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A human was marrying into the royal family of the Valiant Empire. One of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, Princess Hannah stood at the altar in a gown that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. Her silver skin glowed softly. Her large violet eyes scanned the crowd with the careful precision of someone trained from birth to rule. She was beautiful. Everyone agreed on that. She was also brilliant. 3 doctoral degrees by the age of 25. The youngest director of Imperial Science and Velian history, her father, Emperor Taeyong, had groomed her to lead their empire into a new golden age. And now she was marrying a human. Daehyun. Aeon walked down the aisle with hesitant steps. He wore the traditional diplomatic robes of Earth, which looked plain and simple next to the elaborate outfits of the other guests. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and kind eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with wonder. When he reached the altar, he gave Hannah a small, nervous smile. "You look beautiful," he whispered in heavily accented Galactic Standard. Hannah nodded politely. She had met him only twice before this day. Both times he had seemed pleasant but unremarkable. A simple clerk from Earth's diplomatic corps, they had told her. Someone chosen because he was agreeable and unlikely to cause problems. Someone safe. The ceremony began. An ancient Velian priest spoke words that had been used for thousands of years. Daehyun repeated his vows carefully, stumbling over a few of the more complex phrases. Hannah spoke hers perfectly, as expected. When it came time to exchange the traditional gifts, Daehyun presented her with a small wooden box. "It's from Earth," he said quietly. "A music box. My grandmother made it." Hannah opened it. A simple melody played, tinkling and sweet. It was primitive compared to Velian sonic art, but there was something charming about it. She thanked him and presented her gift in return. A quantum crystal that could store 1 billion books worth of information. He accepted it with wide eyes, turning it over in his hands like a child with a new toy. "It's amazing," he said. "I've never seen anything like it." The Velian nobles in attendance exchanged glances. Some smiled indulgently. Others looked faintly embarrassed for their princess. The reception was held in the largest ballroom on Nexus Prime. Dignitaries from across the galaxy came to offer their congratulations. Most spoke to Hannah while Daehyun stood quietly beside her. Nodding and smiling at appropriate moments, Admiral Juwon, Hannah's childhood friend and commander of the Velian Starfleet, approached with a glass of Andromedan wine in each hand. She offered one to Hannah and glanced at Daehyun with barely concealed amusement. "Well, Princess, you've certainly made history today," Giwan said. Her voice carried the subtle tone of someone used to being obeyed. "The first Velian royal to marry a human. How exciting. It's an honor to help bring our peoples closer together," Daehyun said politely. "Of course," Juwon replied. She turned to Hannah. "I was just telling the Andromedan ambassador about humanity's recent discovery of quantum folding. Only 200 years behind the rest of us. Such quick learners, these humans." Daehyun's smile didn't waver. "We do our best. There's so much to learn from civilizations like yours. Your people were building starships when humans were still figuring out agriculture." "Indeed." Guan sipped her wine. "Tell me, Daehyun, what did you do before joining the diplomatic corps?" "I worked in records management," he said. "Keeping track of documents, organizing files. Not very exciting, I'm afraid." "How... practical?" Jiwon's expression was kind, but her eyes showed pity. She touched Hannah's arm gently. "I'm sure you two will be very happy together. If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with the defense minister." She walked away, leaving Hannah and Daehyun alone in the crowd. "I'm sorry," Daehyun said quietly. "I know this isn't what you wanted." Hannah looked at him, surprised by his directness. "It's my duty," she said. "Personal wants don't factor into it." "Still," he smiled that gentle smile again. "I'll try not to be too much of a burden. I know you have important work to do. I'm just happy to be here and learn." Later that night, Hannah stood on the observation deck of her transport ship, watching Nexus Prime grow smaller behind them. They were heading to the Velian homeworld, where she would resume her work, and he would. What did a human consort do in the Velian court? Daehyun joined her at the window, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might want some," he said. "It's from Earth. Green tea. It's supposed to be calming." She accepted the cup. The tea was simple, plain even, but warm and pleasant. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. "Can I ask you something?" Daehyun said finally. "Of course. Why did you agree to this marriage? Someone like you could have had anyone in the galaxy." Hana considered the question. No one had asked her that directly before. 3 years ago, our ships nearly went to war with yours over a mining dispute in the outer sectors. Thousands could have died over a misunderstanding. My father believes that permanent bonds between our peoples will prevent such disasters in the future. And you? What do you believe? She looked at him. His eyes were genuinely curious, without any hint of judgment. "I believe that duty comes before personal desires. I believe that peace is worth personal sacrifice." Daehyun nodded slowly. "That's very noble. For what it's worth, I agree with you. Peace is worth it." He finished his tea and set the cup down. "I should let you rest. I'm sure you're tired. Good night, Hana. Good night." He left, and she was alone with the stars again. Somewhere far behind them was Earth, the small blue world that had stumbled into the galactic community barely a century ago. And now she was bound to one of its sons, this simple man who seemed content to organize files and drink tea while the galaxy spun around him. Her father had seemed strangely pleased with the arrangement. When she had questioned the choice of Daehyun specifically, Emperor Taeyang had simply said, "He's exactly what we need. Trust me, daughter." Hana didn't understand what he meant, but she trusted her father. He had ruled the Velian Empire for 200 years and had never made a decision without careful consideration. She finished her tea and headed to her quarters. Tomorrow, they would arrive at the homeworld, and her real life would begin. A life with a husband she barely knew, a simple human who would live in her shadow while she managed projects. Across 100 star systems, she told herself it could be worse. He was kind. He was polite. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about her world. Perhaps, in time, they might even become friends. What she couldn't know, is that the simple man drinking tea and stumbling over galactic standard was watching the same stars she was, and in his mind, he was calculating jump coordinates, fleet positions, and strategic possibilities with the cold precision of someone who had spent years training for exactly this moment. But that truth would remain hidden. For now, Daehyun was just a clerk, just a simple human who was lucky enough to marry a princess, and that was exactly how he needed it to be. 6 months passed like water flowing through Hana's fingers. She barely noticed the time going by, buried as she was in her work. The Imperial Science Directorate managed over 300 research projects across Valiant space. Quantum engines, biological regeneration, stellar cartography, weapons development. Every day brought new challenges, new discoveries, new problems to solve. Daehyun settled into Palace's life with quiet ease. He accompanied her to formal functions when required, standing politely beside her while she discussed matters far beyond his understanding. When not needed for official duties, he spent his time in the palace gardens or in the library. Reading historical texts about Velian culture, the staff loved him. Within weeks, everyone from the cleaning crew to the head chef knew his name. He would often be found in the kitchens, helping to prepare meals while asking questions about Velian cooking techniques. Or in the gardens, working alongside the groundskeepers to maintain the exotic plants that grew there. "Your husband is very kind," the head gardener told Hana one day. "He has gentle hands. Good for working with delicate flowers." Hana nodded absently. She was reviewing a proposal for a new type of shield generator and only half listening. "That's good. I'm glad he's found something to occupy his time." What she didn't say was that she found his contentment with such simple tasks slightly sad. Here he was in the palace of one of the galaxy's greatest empires. Surrounded by technology and knowledge that Earth wouldn't develop for centuries, And he was satisfied planting flowers and learning to cook. But he seemed happy, and he was kind to her in ways she hadn't expected. He learned her schedule and made sure she had tea waiting when she returned from late meetings. He asked about her work every evening, listening with genuine interest, even when she could tell he understood perhaps one word in 10. "Tell me about this quantum folding project again," he would say, his brow furrowed in concentration. "So you're trying to fold space itself? Like folding paper?" "That's an oversimplification, but essentially yes," she would explain patiently. "By manipulating quantum fields, we can reduce the effective distance between 2 points, and that makes ships go faster." In a manner of speaking, he would nod thoughtfully, as if he had just learned something profound. Then he would ask another basic question, and she would explain it the way she might to a child. One evening, Kana attended a conference of the galaxy's leading scientists. The topic was theoretical applications of dark matter manipulation. She sat in the front row with the other Velian researchers. Daehyun sat in the back, as always, a small data pad in his lap where he occasionally made notes. During the break, Dr. Murray, a colleague from the Andromeda Institute, approached Hannah with a sympathetic smile. "Your husband is very supportive," Murray said, glancing back at where Daehyun was quietly reading something on his pad. "It must be nice to have someone who at least tries to understand your work, even if—" She trailed off delicately. "Even if he can't actually understand it," Hannah finished. Murray looked embarrassed. "I didn't mean it like that. It's just, you're so brilliant, Hannah. And he's simple," Hannah said. The word tasted bitter in her mouth. "I know, but he's kind. That's worth something." As the weeks turned into months, Hannah found herself looking forward to her evenings with Daehyun. After long days of managing brilliant but difficult scientists, dealing with bureaucratic obstacles, and solving problems that would baffle most beings in the galaxy, there was something relaxing about his company. He never challenged her, never competed with her. He just listened and smiled and asked his simple questions. They began taking walks together in the garden after dinner. He showed her the earth plants he had cultivated in a small corner. Roses, he called them. Fragile flowers with soft petals and thorns on their stems. "Why do they have thorns?" she asked once. "Protection," he said, gently touching one of the sharp points. "Beautiful things need to protect themselves. Even something as lovely as a rose knows it needs defenses." She found herself thinking about that comment later. There was something almost poetic about it, coming from him. But then the peace was shattered. The Kryn Collective, a militaristic civilization from the far side of the galaxy, had been expanding their territory for decades. Most civilizations gave them wide berth. Kryn were aggressive, numerous, and had no interest in diplomacy. They took what they wanted through force. When they began making moves near Velian territory, Emperor Tiang called a meeting of his military advisors. Hannah attended as the director of Imperial Science. She was surprised when Daehyun was also summoned. "Father, is it appropriate for Daehyun to attend?" she asked privately before the meeting began. "This is a matter of military strategy."
He's family now.
The Emperor said simply. He should be aware of threats to the Empire. The meeting was tense. Admiral Giwan presented intelligence showing Kryn scout ships testing Velian border defenses. 3 mining outposts had reported close encounters. The Kryn fleet was massive, possibly numbering in the thousands of ships. "They're probing for weakness," Giwan said, pointing to a star map, "testing our response times, mapping our patrol routes." "What do they want?" asked one of the generals. "The outer sectors, rich in rare minerals. They don't care that we've been mining there for centuries." Daehyun sat quietly in the back of the room, the same way he sat at scientific conferences. But then, unexpectedly, he spoke. "Their fleet movements seem inefficient." Everyone turned to look at him. Admiral Guan raised an eyebrow. "Inefficient?" "Yes." Daehyun stood and approached the star map, his usual nervous demeanor replaced by something else, something almost confident. "Look at how they're dispersing their scouts. They're covering too much area too quickly. It's wasteful. Unless—" He paused, studying the map. "Unless what?" the Emperor prompted. "Unless they're not actually planning to attack the outer sectors. This could be a diversion. If I wanted to attack Velian space, I would make you think I was interested in one area while preparing to strike somewhere else entirely." There was a moment of silence. Then Admiral Juan laughed. With respect, Dahian, military strategy is a bit more complex than that. The Kryn have always been direct in their attacks. Subtlety isn't their way, perhaps, Dahian said. That confident moment passed, and he was back to his usual self. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken. I don't know much about these things. He returned to his seat, and the meeting continued without him. Later, Na found him in their quarters, sitting by the window and looking out at the stars. She sat beside him. That was unexpected, she said. What you said in the meeting, I overstepped, he said quietly. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. You didn't. It was actually an interesting observation. She paused. How did you think of it? He shrugged. I read a lot of military history. Earth's history is full of wars and tactics. I suppose some of it stuck with me, but I'm sure the Admiral is right. She's the professional. Still, Father seemed interested in what you said. He was just being polite. They sat in silence for a while. Hannah studied her husband's profile. There had been something different about him in that meeting. Just for a moment, he had seemed sharper, more focused. Then it had disappeared like morning mist. Dahian, she said carefully. Is there more? To you, than you show people. He turned to her with that gentle smile. I'm just a simple man, Hannah. What you see is what there is. But for the first time since their marriage, she wondered if that was really true. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way he had analyzed that star map. The confidence in his voice, the way the Emperor had looked at him with something that might have been approval. She got up and walked through their quarters. Dahian was asleep in his room. They maintained separate bedrooms, as was proper for a political marriage. She found herself looking at his things. The books he read, the small collection of Earth items he kept on a shelf, and there, partially hidden behind a plant, was something that didn't belong. A data device, smaller than her thumb. It wasn't Velian technology. She picked it up carefully, examining it. The design was unfamiliar, and it was encrypted with a level of security she hadn't seen before. She put it back exactly where she found it. Her heart beating faster. Simple men didn't carry military-grade encrypted devices. Simple men didn't analyze fleet movements with that kind of precision. But she said nothing. Not yet. She needed to think. She needed to understand what she had married into. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, and somewhere in the darkness, the Kryn fleet prepared for something that no one in the Velian Empire truly understood yet. 14 months after their wedding, the Kryn Collective made their move. They didn't probe or test anymore. They struck hard and fast against a Velian mining colony called Terminus 7. 6,000 people lived there. Within 3 hours of the attack, all of them were dead. The news reached the palace just after dawn. Hannah was already awake, reviewing research proposals when her communication device lit up with emergency alerts. She rushed to the command center where her father and his advisors were already gathering. The images from Terminus 7 were horrific, as the colony was simply gone, reduced to debris and ash. The Kryn had used plasma bombardment to turn the entire settlement into molten slag. No survivors, no warning, just complete annihilation. Admiral Jiwan's face was pale with rage. They didn't even try to occupy it, they just destroyed it. This is a message. What message? Emperor Taeyong's voice was steady, but Hannah could see the grief in his eyes. 6,000 of his people, gone in moments. That they can strike wherever they want, that our defenses mean nothing to them. Jiwan pulled up tactical displays. Our scouts report a massive Kryn fleet assembling in the outer sectors. At least 800 warships. Maybe more. The room fell silent. 800 ships was larger than anything the Velian military had faced in 2 centuries. We need to respond, General Kyung said. If we don't, they'll see us as weak. They'll strike again. But where do we strike? Another advisor asked. We don't know their staging areas. We don't know their supply lines. The debate went on for hours. Hannah listened, her scientific mind trying to find patterns in the chaos. But this wasn't her field. This was war, and despite all her education, she had never studied war. A messenger entered and approached the Emperor. Your Majesty, the Kryn ambassador has sent a transmission. Play it. The holographic display flickered to life. A Kryn commander appeared, its multiple eyes glowing red, its mandibles clicking together as it spoke in harsh galactic standard. Velian Empire. You will withdraw from the outer sectors within 10 solar cycles. All mining operations will cease. All colonies will be abandoned. If you do not comply, we will destroy another settlement every day until you do. This is not negotiable. This is not a discussion. Comply, or watch your people die. The transmission ended. The room erupted in angry voices. Admiral Juan was already planning a retaliatory strike. General Kyung was calculating force deployments. Everyone was talking at once. Emperor Taeyong raised his hand, and silence fell. Send for Daehain. Hannah stared at her father. Father, why? This is a military matter. Just do it, daughter. 10 minutes later, Daehain entered the command center. He looked confused by the summons, still wearing his garden clothes with dirt on his hands. When he saw the images from Terminus 7 on the displays, his expression changed. The usual gentle warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. 6,000 people, he said quietly. All dead, the Emperor confirmed. Sit down, Daehain. I want to hear your thoughts. Admiral Gyawan looked incredulous. Your Majesty, with all respect, we don't have time for... ... Sit down. All of you. The Emperor's voice left no room for argument. They sat. Daehain remained standing, studying the tactical displays with an intensity that Hannah had never seen from him before. The Kryn ultimatum, Emperor Taeyong said. What do you think? Daehain was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed. The hesitant, simple tone was gone. It's too aggressive. The Kryn are brutal, but they're not stupid. They know that destroying Terminus 7 will unite the Velian people against them. They know you can't back down from this without looking weak to every other civilization watching. Then why do it? Gyawan demanded. Because they want you to attack. They want you to send your fleet into the outer sectors where they're waiting with superior numbers. Hyan pointed to the star map. Look at their demands. 10 solar cycles? That's not enough time to evacuate colonies properly. They're not actually expecting you to comply. They're expecting you to fight. So we fight, General Kyung said. We can't let this stand. If you fight on their terms, you lose. Daehain's finger traced patterns on the display. 800 ships minimum, probably more in reserve. The Velian fleet number's what? 300. 400. 350, Guan said stiffly. But our technology is superior, is it? Superior enough to overcome a 3-day-1 disadvantage? Superior enough that you're willing to bet the Empire on it? Daehain looked at the Emperor. They're trying to bait you into a conventional engagement where numbers matter more than technology. What do you suggest? The Emperor asked. Daehain hesitated. For just a moment, Hannah saw conflict in his eyes. Then he seemed to make a decision. Unconventional warfare. Don't give them the battle they want. Hit their supply lines. Target their communication relays. Make them fight on 100 small fronts instead of one large one. Use your technological advantage for precision strikes, not fleet battles. The room was silent. Admiral Gyawan looked at Daehain with new eyes, reassessing him. Where did a diplomatic clerk learn military tactics? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Earth's history is full of wars, Daehain said, his voice returning to its usual soft tone. I read a lot. It's probably a bad idea. I'm sorry for wasting your time, but the Emperor was nodding slowly. No, it's not a bad idea. Admiral Gyawan, I want you to explore this approach. Work with Daehain on the tactical details. Your Majesty, I hardly think... ... That's an order, Admiral. The meeting ended shortly after. Hannah caught up with Daehain in the corridor outside. What was that? She demanded, keeping her voice low. What was what? Don't play simple with me. I saw you in there. That wasn't a clerk who reads military history as a hobby. That was someone who knows what they're talking about. Daehain looked at her, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes. Something that might have been an apology or a warning. Hannah, The encrypted communication device in our quarters. I found it 2 months ago. Who are you talking to on Earth? His expression didn't change, but she saw his jaw tighten slightly. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. I can't. Not yet. I'm sorry. He started to walk away. Dahan, he stopped. Are you going to hurt my people? He turned back to her, and the look in his eyes was completely sincere. Never. Everything I've suggested is to protect the Valiant Empire. You have to trust me on that. How can I trust you when I don't even know who you are? He had no answer for that. He walked away, leaving her alone in the corridor with more questions than ever. Over the next 3 days, the Kryn struck 2 more colonies. Smaller settlements this time, but the message was clear. They were serious about their threats. The death toll climbed to 9,000. Hannah threw herself into her work, trying to develop new shield technologies that might help protect the remaining colonies. But she couldn't focus. She kept thinking about Dahan, about the way he had analyzed the tactical situation, about the encrypted device, about the monthly communications he had with someone on Earth. She accessed the palace security records late one night. Finding Dahan's communication logs wasn't hard. She was the Emperor's daughter. She had clearance for almost everything. What she found made her blood run cold. The communications were encrypted with military-grade security, the kind of encryption Earth wasn't supposed to have, the kind that would take even Velian computers years to break. The communications went to a specific location on Earth, a facility that wasn't listed in any diplomatic database, and they had been happening since before their marriage. Since before first contact between humanity and the Velian Empire, she sat in her office, staring at the data, her mind racing. Who had she married? What was Earth hiding? And why had her father seemed so unsurprised by everything Dahan said in that meeting? A new message came through on her console. Another Kryn attack. Colony Thatany. 3,000 more dead. The galaxy was falling apart around her. And the one person who seemed to understand what was happening was the man she thought she knew, but clearly didn't. She made a decision. Tomorrow, she would confront her father. She would demand answers about why he had really arranged this marriage, about what he knew that she didn't. But tonight, she would watch her husband. She would see what a simple diplomatic clerk did when he thought no one was paying attention. She found him in his quarters, sitting at his desk. His back was to the door, and he didn't hear her approach. On his display was something that made her breath catch. Fleet deployment patterns, advanced tactical simulations, mathematical models of engagement scenarios that were far beyond anything a civilian should be able to create. He was planning a war, and from the looks of it, he knew exactly what he was doing. She backed away silently before he could notice her. Her heart was pounding. She returned to her own quarters and sat in the darkness, trying to process what she had seen. The simple man she had married was a lie. But what was the truth? And what did it mean for the Valian Empire? Outside her window, the stars looked different now. Less like distant lights and more like the vast battlefield they might soon become. And somewhere out there, the Kryn fleet was coming closer. 18 months after the wedding, the galaxy learned what real war looked like. The Kryn Collective launched their full invasion on a cold morning when 3 Velian moons aligned. It was a coordinated strike across 16 systems simultaneously. Their fleet wasn't 800 ships. It was 2,000. They had been hiding half their forces in dead zones where sensors couldn't reach. The Velian military reeled from the assault. Within the first 6 hours, 4 more colonies were destroyed. Space stations fell. Defense platforms were overwhelmed. Admiral Juwan's fleet fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 5-1 in some sectors. And then Emperor Taeyong collapsed. Hannah was in the command center when it happened. One moment her father was standing at the tactical display, issuing orders with the calm authority of a leader who had ruled for 2 centuries. The next moment he was on the floor, his breathing labored, his silver skin turning gray. The royal physicians rushed him to the medical wing. The diagnosis was severe cardiac stress. His body, aged even by Velian standards, was shutting down under the pressure. He needs complete rest, the head physician told Hannah, Any more stress could kill him, which meant Hannah was now in charge. At 26 years old, with no military experience and a galaxy falling apart around her, she was suddenly the acting empress of the Velian Empire. The first emergency meeting was chaos. Generals shouting over each other. Admirals demanding more resources. Scientists presenting weapon designs that would take months to implement. And everywhere the same message: they were losing. "We need to consolidate our forces," Admiral Guan said, her uniform torn from a battle she had barely escaped. "Pull back to the core systems. Defend what we can." "That means abandoning 12 colonies," General Kyung protested. Millions of people who will die anyway if we spread ourselves too thin." The argument went on. Hannah felt paralyzed. Every decision meant death. Every choice meant sacrifice. She looked around the room at the faces of people who had served her father for decades and realized none of them had an answer. "Where's Dae-Hyan?" she asked suddenly. The room fell quiet. Admiral Giwan frowned. "Your Majesty, with respect, this isn't the time for ... I ask where my husband is." "He's in the secure communications room," someone said. "He's been there for the past 3 hours." Hannah stood. "Bring him here now." 5 minutes later, Dae-Hyan entered the war room. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear and focused. He saw the tactical displays showing the Kryn advance, saw the casualty reports, saw the desperation on every face. "Hannah," he said quietly, "I'm sorry about your father. How is he?" "Alive? Barely." She stood and faced him directly. "I need you to stop pretending. I know you've been communicating with Earth. I know you have military training. I know you're not who you said you were." Her voice was steady, but inside she was terrified. Terrified of what he might say. Terrified of what it might mean. "My empire is dying. My people are dying. And you're the only person in this room who doesn't look surprised by any of it. So I'm Eski. NG you as my husband and as someone who supposedly cares about me to tell me the truth." The room was completely silent. Everyone was staring at Dae-Hyan. He looked at Hannah for a long moment. Then he reached up and touched something behind his ear. There was a soft click, and his voice changed completely when he spoke again. The accent was gone. The hesitation was gone. What remained was the voice of someone used to giving orders. "Computer authorization, Dae-Hyan Kong, verification code, Alpha 77 Omega. Declassify my identity file and transmit to this location." A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. What it showed made everyone step back. Admiral Dae-Hyan Kong, Supreme Commander of United Earth Special Operations Command. Graduate of the Terran Naval Academy with honors. Veteran of the Proxima Conflict and the Mars Rebellion. Holder of the Solar Cross for Tactical Excellence. Age 37. 20 years of military service. The simple clerk from the diplomatic corps didn't exist. He never had. Admiral Juwan's hand moved to her sidearm. "You're a spy?" "Yes," Dae-Hyan said simply. "You infiltrated our empire under false pretenses." "Yes." "Married into our royal family to gather intelligence." "Yes." Looked at Hannah. But not only for that reason. Hannah felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Their marriage. Their conversations. Their quiet evenings in the garden. All of it was a carefully constructed deception. "Why?" she whispered. Dae-Hyan took a deep breath. "Because Earth needed to understand the galaxy we had entered. Because we needed allies we could trust. And because we needed to be in position for exactly this moment." "What moment?" General Kyung demanded. "The moment when the Velian Empire faced an enemy it couldn't defeat." Alone, Dae-Hyan walked to the tactical display and began manipulating it with the ease of someone who had spent years studying such things. Earth has been preparing for galactic-scale conflict since first contact. We knew it was only a matter of time before we encountered a civilization like the Kryn, aggressive, numerous, convinced of their own superiority. "Earth is primitive, Admiral," Juwan said. "You've been in space for barely a century. That's what we wanted you to think. Dahine pulled up new data. The truth is, Earth has been developing military technology at an accelerated pace. We learned from our own history that the galaxy is dangerous. We learned to prepare, and we learned to make others underestimate us. He turned to Hannah. I was sent here to forge an alliance, to assess the Velian military, to understand your technology, but also to be in position to offer help when you needed it most. The marriage was political, yes, but your father knew what I was from the beginning. My father knew? Hannah felt betrayed on a level she couldn't put into words. He was the one who suggested it. He suspected Earth was hiding its true capabilities. He wanted a direct line to our command structure, and he wanted someone in the palace who could think like a human military commander when the time came. Dahine pulled up a communication interface. I can contact Earth right now. I can request military assistance. But I need authorization from the acting empress of the Velian Empire. That's you, Hannah. Everyone looked at her. The weight of the decision pressed down like a physical force. Trust the husband who had lied to her for 18 months or watch her empire burn. What can Earth offer? She asked, her voice hollow. A fleet, technology, tactics, and the element of surprise. Dahine met her eyes. The Kryn think they're fighting an ancient, civilized empire. They have no idea what humans are capable of when we go to war. And we've had thousands of years to perfect it. Admiral Jiwan stepped forward. Even if this is true, even if Earth has some hidden military strength, it would take weeks for ships to arrive. We'll be overrun by then. Our fleet is already here, Dahine said quietly. They've been in stealth position at the edge of Velian space for 3 months. Waiting for my signal? The room erupted in chaos. Shouts of anger, fear, betrayal. General Kyung was calling for Dahine's arrest. Admiral Guan was demanding to know how Earth ships could have entered Velian space undetected. Hannah held up her hand, and slowly, quiet returned. She looked at Dahine, the stranger wearing her husband's face. You lied to me about everything, she said. Not everything. His voice was soft again, vulnerable. I lied about who I was. I lied about my training and my mission. But I never lied about my feelings for you. Every evening we spent together, every conversation, every moment in the garden, that was real. You're brilliant and kind and everything I could have hoped for in a wife. I fell in love with you, Hannah. That wasn't part of the mission. That was just me being lucky enough to marry someone extraordinary. Tears burned in her eyes, but she forced them back. There would be time for emotion later. Right now, she was the Empress, and her people were dying. If I give authorization, you can save the Empire. I can help save it. This is your empire, your people. We'll fight beside you, not for you. But yes, with human assistance, the Kryn can be stopped. She took a deep breath. Around her, the command center waited. The fate of billions hung on her next words. Send the signal, she said. Bring your fleet. Dahine nodded once. He activated the communication system and spoke in a language she had never heard, used before. English. Earth's primary language. The words were sharp and precise. This is Admiral Kong to you, ESC Defiant. Authorization code Alpha 77 Omega. Operation Revelation is go. All fleet elements drop stealth and move to engagement positions. We have a war to win. Somewhere in the darkness of space, invisible to every Velian sensor, the human fleet received the signal in the galaxy, was about to learn what humanity had really been doing for the past century while everyone thought they were primitive newcomers to the stars. Hannah watched her husband transformed before her eyes from a simple gardener to a military commander, and wondered if she would ever know which version was the real him, or if perhaps, impossibly, they both were. The sensors detected them first. Suddenly, where there had been empty space at the edge of the Velian system, there were ships. Hundreds of them. The displays lit up with contact markers as stealth fields dropped and the human fleet revealed itself. Admiral Juan stared at the tactical screen in disbelief. That's impossible. We've been scanning that region for months. There was nothing there. You were scanning for Velian technology signatures, Daehan said. Now standing at the command console with the confidence of someone who belonged there, human stealth systems work differently. We learned a long time ago that if you want to hide from advanced civilizations, you can't use their methods. You have to think like a primitive species and build upward from there. 300 warships, one bristling with weapons that looked crude compared to elegant Velian designs, but somehow more menacing. They were built for function, not beauty. Built for war, not exploration.
Oh.
Those ships are heavily armed, General Kyung observed, studying the scans. More weapons than shields? That's a very aggressive design philosophy. Humans learned warfare from each other, Daehan said. We fought ourselves for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We know how to hurt things. It's what we're good at. Communication came through from the lead human vessel. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She was older than Daehan, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Admiral Kang, this is Fleet Admiral Sujin aboard the UESC Defiant. Good to see you, sir. We're reading significant hostile forces in system. Request permission to engage. Daehan turned to Hannah. Your empire, your decision. I can offer recommendations, but you're the Empress. The order has to come from you. Hannah looked at this stranger she had married. Part of her wanted to refuse out of pride and anger, but that part was small compared to the part that wanted to save her people. Engage, she said. Coordinate with Admiral Giwan's remaining forces. Protect what colonies still stand. Sujin smiled grimly. Understood, Your Majesty. All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Sujin. We are weapons-free. I repeat, weapons-free. Show these bugs what happens when you threaten our allies. The human fleet moved with a speed that shocked the Velian observers. They didn't advance in careful formations like the Velian military. They scattered, breaking into smaller groups that moved independently, each one hunting for targets. What are they doing? Admiral Juwan demanded. That's no formation I've ever seen. They're going to get themselves killed. Wolfpack tactics, Daehan explained. Small groups working together, hitting hard and moving fast. We used it on Earth's oceans centuries ago. It translates well to space combat. The first engagement happened near Colony Sigma 4, where a Kryn battle group was preparing to launch a bombardment. 20 Kryn warships against 4 human destroyers. The math seemed clear. The Kryn should have won easily. They didn't. The human ships came in fast, faster than the Kryn expected. They launched missiles, but not the sophisticated guided weapons the Velians used. These were simple kinetic projectiles, metal slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Thousands of them, filling space with a wall of deadly metal. The Kryn shields handled the first wave. The second wave, but the humans kept firing, overwhelming the defenses through sheer volume. And then when the shields flickered, the human ships closed in with energy weapons that burn. With brutal efficiency, 3 Kryn ships died in the first minute. The rest tried to regroup, but the human destroyers were already moving again, circling like predators, never staying still long enough to be targeted effectively. They're not trying to outthink the enemy, General Kyung said, watching the battle with fascination and horror. They're just overwhelming them. It's almost ... primitive. Effective, though, Admiral Giwan admitted grudgingly. More battles erupted across the system. Everywhere the Kryn fleet encountered human ships, the same pattern emerged. The humans didn't fight fair. They didn't follow standard engagement protocols. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting messages in the Kryn language designed to anger and confuse. They targeted command ships first, decapitating leadership. They laid mines in retreat routes and ambushed pursuing forces. It was brutal, efficient, terrifying, and it was working. Daehan coordinated the human forces from the Velian command center, his fingers moving across the displays with practiced ease. He issued orders in rapid English, switching between units, redirecting forces, exploiting every weakness in the Kryn formation. Group 7, collapse that flank. Group 3, fall back and draw them into the minefield. Defiant, I need you to make a firing run on their flagship. Yes, I know it's dangerous. That's why it will work. Hannah watched him work. This was the real Daehyun, not the simple gardener, not the soft-spoken diplomat. This was a warrior who had spent his entire adult life preparing for combat, and he was terrifyingly good at it. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Kryn fleet, confident in their numerical superiority, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to engage on their terms. The humans didn't stand and trade blows. They struck and vanished. They led Kryn forces into traps. They used the Velian knowledge of the local space to their advantage, and slowly, possibly, the Kryn began to lose. Admiral Giwan's Velian forces, seeing the human tactics, began to adapt. They started working with the human wolf packs, using their superior shields and sensors to support the more aggressive human attacks. It became a deadly partnership. Velian precision and human ferocity. The Kryn flagship, a massive dreadnought that had destroyed 4 Velian colonies, found itself surrounded by 15 human ships that simply refused to die. They took hit after hit, their armor scarred and burning, but they kept coming, kept firing. One of them rammed the dreadnought's shield generators in a suicide run that took down the defenses. The rest of the human ships poured fire into the breach. The dreadnought exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from the planet below, that broke the Kryn fleet. They began to retreat, jumping to faster-than-light speed, abandoning their invasion. The humans pursued them to the edge of the system, making sure they understood the message clearly. Stay away, or this happens again. When the last Kryn ship vanished, the command center erupted in cheers. Velian and human personnel embraced, celebrating a victory that hours ago had seemed impossible. But Hannah didn't celebrate. She walked out of the command center and found a quiet observation room where she could be alone. She stood there, looking out at the stars, at the debris fields where thousands had died, at the human ships patrolling her space like they belonged there. Daehyun found her an hour later. He entered quietly and stood beside her, not touching, just being present. "You should be celebrating with your people," she said without looking at him. "They're not just my people anymore. I've lived here for 18 months. I've made friends. I care about this place. Is that true? Or is that the spy talking again?" He was quiet for a moment. "That's fair. You have every right to doubt everything I say. I lied to you for 1.5 years. I made you think I was someone I wasn't. There's no excuse for that. My father knew," she said. "It wasn't a question. From the beginning. He's brilliant, Hannah. He suspected Earth was hiding something when we made first contact to Isley. When we seemed too eager to be friendly with civilizations far more advanced than us. He wanted someone in the palace who could give him direct insight into human thinking. And he wanted a connection to Earth that couldn't be severed by politics. So he married me off to a spy. He married you to someone he believed would help protect the Empire when the time came. He wasn't wrong." Hannah finally turned to look at him. "Who are you really?" "Not the Admiral. Not the gardener. You." Daehyun seemed to consider the question carefully. "I'm someone who was trained from age 15 to serve Earth's military. Someone who learned to kill efficiently and think strategically. But I'm also someone who likes quiet evenings and simple pleasures. Someone who finds peace in growing things. Both of those people are real, Hannah. The mission taught me to be the warrior. But you taught me I could be something else too?" Pretty words from someone who deceived me. And I'm sorry. Not for doing my duty to Earth. I'd make the same choice again if I had to. But I'm sorry for hurting you. That was never supposed to happen." They stood in silence. Outside, a human destroyer drifted past, its hull scarred from battle. "What happens now?" Hannah asked. "That depends on you. I can arrange for an annulment if you want. You can choose another husband. Someone honest. Someone who deserves you. And Earth. Earth and the Velian Empire are allies now. That won't change. We saved each other today. That bond will last regardless of what you decide about us." Hannah thought about the past 18 months. About the lies, yes, but also about the genuine moments. The evenings in the garden, when he listened to her talk about her work, the way he made sure she had tea when she was tired, the kindness he showed to everyone in the palace. "You asked me once why I agreed to marry you," she said. "I told you it was duty. That personal wants didn't matter. I remember I was wrong. Personal wants do matter. Peace matters. Duty matters. But so does what I want." She finally looked at him directly. "I want honesty. Complete honesty. No more secrets. No more pretending to be simple when you're brilliant. No more hiding who you are." "I can do that," he said quietly. "I want a real marriage. Not a political arrangement. If we're going to do this, we do it properly. I want that too. More than you know, I want you to teach me. About strategy. About warfare. About how humans think. Because next time there's a crisis, I don't want to be the leader who doesn't understand what's happening." Daehyun smiled. It was his real smile this time, not the gentle, simple one, but something sharper and more genuine. "Only if you teach me advanced Velian quantum mechanics. The real version? Not the simplified one you thought I couldn't understand." She laughed despite herself. It felt strange to laugh after everything that had happened, but it also felt necessary. "You understood all of it, didn't you? Every technical explanation I gave you. You were gathering intelligence?" "I was. But I was also just happy to listen to you talk about things you're passionate about. That part was real." They stood together, looking out at the stars. Earth and Velian ships patrolled together now, an alliance forged in blood and necessity. "This isn't forgiveness," Hannah said. "You understand that? You don't get to lie to someone for 18 months and be forgiven in one conversation. I understand. But it's a start. We can build from here. Slowly, honestly. I'd like that." Below them, Emperor Taeyong was recovering. The physicians said he would live, that he was already asking about the battle, about the alliance, about his daughter. The Galactic Council would convene in a week to discuss Earth's unexpected military strength. There would be questions, concerns, fear from some civilizations. The humans had hidden their true nature, but there would also be respect. Because the galaxy had learned something important today. Humanity was done being underestimated, and Hannah had learned something too. The simple man she married was gone, revealed as an illusion. But the man who remained, the warrior with a gardener's soul, the strategist who made time for tea and flowers, that man might be someone she could truly love if he proved worthy of it, and if his past year of deception had shown anything. It was that Daehyun was very, very good at proving himself when it mattered. "Come on," she said, taking his hand for the first time since the revelation. "We have a lot of work to do, and a lot of talking. Starting with you explaining exactly how Earth managed to hide an entire fleet in my space for 3 months. He squeezed her hand gently. "That's going to take several hours to explain properly. Good we have time. Humans are very patient when it matters, right?" "Yes," he said, smiling. "We are." They walked together back toward the command center, not as the simple clerk and the princess, but as equals, as partners, as what they might become if they were both brave enough to try. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. And somewhere among them, Earth's ships stood ready, no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be less than they were. The galaxy had wanted humanity to be simple and primitive, safe, controllable. The galaxy had been wrong, and that changed everything.